Sweet, it looks like we get to be on the play. See what we have here. Okay, I think we can roll with this. Chart a Course is a nice way to kind of hit our third land drop with this hand. Yeah, I think we can't ask for a lot more than this. But we'll see what we're playing against. A nice thing about Chart a Course is we can also put a creature in the graveyard just to get it back later with the Scarab God. And it looks like we're likely against Temur Energy. Pretty popular deck in Standard these days. So I am just gonna play out the tap land because we drew it for the turn. It allows us to play the Gifted Aetherborn. It allows us to have Supreme Will if we want it next turn. So it does a couple things for us rather than that Chart a Course that was the plan before we drew the pools last turn. And now I think we kind of are forced to run out the Gifted Aetherborn to try to trade it with the Longtusk Cub. If our opponent does have a removal spell, then they have a removal spell. If they... Okay, sure. So they have a removal spell. So now they're going to be able to get in with the Cub, and we're going to be facing a pretty sizable Longtusk Cub. Well, that was fortunate. So we drew Fatal Push. We have Fatal Push, but I'm actually just going to pass the turn. Reason being is I still want to hold up Supreme Will in case of a card like, say, Bristling Hydra out of the Temur Energy deck would just be devastating for us here. Even a Whirl of Virtuoso would be pretty bad for us. But it looks like our opponent's just passing. Interesting. So I'm going to Supreme Will and just grab a land. We need to hit our land drops. And now we can actually go Fatal Push your Longtusk Cub and have Supreme Will to counter something. But if our opponent doesn't pump the Cub, maybe we just take the hit one more time. Nah. Our opponent, yeah, I think we just go for the Fatal Push. I think we're gonna end up countering something this turn. That's kind of my gut. Although I guess not. Well, we don't need to play the Scarab God yet. Just gonna pass. I wonder if our opponent's playing around our Supreme Will. Maybe they are. Maybe they play a Virtuoso this turn. No, it's going to be a Glorybringer. Okay. Well, we can Supreme Will that. So I would like to Supreme Will. And now we're going to get into this weird situation where do we play out the Scarab God where if our opponent doesn't have the Confiscation Coup, we probably just win. But is it worth the risk, you know? My gut says it's not. I think I'm just going to say I'm going to play land go here. Not casting the Chart a Course. We have Glimmer. And here's a Virtuoso. Alright, I'm going to respond to that with the Glimmer. Clearly, we don't want these two lands. We don't want those two lands either, but that's what we drew. So Now we're getting to a spot where we may just have to run out the Scarab God, because the Whirl of Virtuoso can make 3 Thopters, and that could be problematic for us. Alright, Vraska's Contempt, not a bad draw. No reason not to cast this Charter Course at this point. Well, yep, it's time for the Scarab God. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it. If our opponent does have the answer, the Confiscation Coup, we do have Vraska's Contempt. It looks like, though, it's just a temporary answer. It's Harness Lightning. So that we're fine with. We're going to get the Scarab God back on our turn. Although there's a Bristling Hydra, so our opponent's got a decent amount of pressure. And now we're kind of wishing we had played the Scarab God the previous turn when we could have played it and decided to take the more conservative line. Well, I like playing out the Kitesail Freebooter. Get a look at what our opponent's got going on there. And maybe our opponent does have another Harness Lightning. No, it's actually a Braid. Okay, sure. So just a land left for our opponent. So we're just kind of hoping no whammies on this one draw step. If our opponent basically draws... our opponent needs to draw either like a Glorybringer or an answer to the Scarab God. If our opponent does not find it, we're just in a great spot. We can block the Bristling Hydra. I think it's correct to do so. It makes our opponent have to pump the Hydra, then we trade off, but then we can still just replay the Scarab God on our turn. Assuming that our opponent didn't draw specifically Essence Scatter, this line is correct. And if we do successfully just get the Scarab God into play this turn, I don't think we can lose. It's just that it's that impactful of a Magic card, you know? Our opponent's now kind of sitting there helpless. I mean, they could draw Confiscation Coup. They drew Coup this turn. Okay, but and maybe we should have actually activated the Scarab God just to get Kitesail Freebooter in our opponent's draw step to try to get around a potentially top-decked Coup in that spot. But anyways, yep, our opponent's just going to concede. So we don't actually have to sideboard very much against Temur. This deck is kind of built. It's already built sideboarded in the matchup, more or less. You do want another copy of Gonti. That card is pretty good. And I actually am fine with just cutting Vraska's Contempt. We still want to keep our deck pretty lean as far as spells. And we're on the draw. The search for Azcanta, I'm fine with just actually the single copy. If I was on the play, I would board in the second search. Don't need Duress or Negate, so yep. Good to go. As weird as it may seem, just sideboarding one card in, one card out. And Contempt is still good in the matchup. I mean, it kills Planeswalkers. It depends how heavy Planeswalker the Temur build is. If they do have the 2 Nissa Steward of Elements and the 2 Chandras, then if I knew that for a fact, then I wouldn't board out any Vraska's Contempts, but I think just in the dark, it's fine to board one out. Because a lot of versions don't have all those planeswalkers. And Essence Extraction is just 1 mana cheaper, which is kind of important. So we have a chart a course hand. 2 chart a course. And there's a Servant of the Conduit. Okay. So we have the option to hold up Essence Scatter here. And I think we should. I think our opponent's very likely to play a creature here. Maybe it's a Rogue Refiner, maybe it's a Whirler Virtuoso, but I'm expecting a creature. There's that Rogue Refiner, so we were rewarded for holding up the Essence Scatter. So we could chart a course, but I think we would rather get the Gifted Aetherborn into play. It's pretty close. I'm just gonna go with the Gifted Aetherborn play. Hopefully our opponent doesn't drop a Glorybringer on this turn or a Chandra. All right, Bristling Hydra we can deal with. Not happy, but we'll deal with it. So here's a Kitesail Freebooter. Kind of want to cast that to see what's going on in our opponent's hand. Sure, let's cast it. And our opponent does have Glorybringer, along with another Hydra and a Servant. So that's actually a pretty good hand. And we don't have a target for our Freebooter, which sucks. Well, now the question kind of is, do we attack with the Gifted Aetherborn? We could attack to get 2 cards automatically. Yeah, I think it's worth attacking. Just so we don't have to discard. And we are going to gain 2. Our opponent probably knows that we have Chart a Course here. If our opponent draws an untapped land, we're probably not going to win the game. Just because that Glorybringer is going to be... If it comes down here, it's just the perfect time to play Glorybringer. Looks like it may... Okay, so our opponent's going with Rogue Refiner instead. Trying to find that land. But now we're at least able to untap. We'll see if our opponent pumps. No pump. So we can actually just drop the Scarab God now. Which is pretty attractive. Yeah, I think we just play Scarab God. It's the way we're going to win most of our games. We want to get it into play as quickly as possible. Turn 5, right on time. And it looks like our opponent drew the land, but it does come into play tapped. So maybe they just have a Bristling Hydra here. Which may not be good enough. Alright, well I kind of like starting with this Chart a Course. We could push away the Servant. And it looks like our opponent's just seen enough here and is just going to concede.